Hey everyone, and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be comparing the 3-year-old Samsung Galaxy S10e versus the brand new S22. Now, if you clicked on this video, then you're probably someone like me who's been holding on to your S10e in hopes that someday someone might release another flagship level phone that isn't a behemoth to hold. I don't really understand the big phone market, but it seems like all the giants in Android are only building big flagships these days. As someone who stands at 6'4" with above average sized hands, I still prefer a smaller phone that I can comfortably hold and use in one hand. Enter the S22. It's the closest flagship phone in size since the S10e was released in March of 2019. So today, we're going to dive right in and figure out if the S22 is worth upgrading to, or if you should hold on to your S10e for another year. We'll look at what you might be gaining with the newer phone, and also what you'd be leaving behind. As you'll see, there are some key features from the S10e that are unfortunately missing from the S22. So with that, let the battle of the small galaxies commence. To start off, let's compare the actual size and physical design of these two phones. These two phones are almost identically sized. Although the S22 is about 1/10 of an inch taller, you don't really notice it. What you do notice is that Samsung has thinned out the bezels all around, which means you're now getting a 6.1 inch screen versus the 5.8 inch screen of the S10e. And let's talk about that screen for a minute. From a resolution and pixel density standpoint, the S22 looks a bit like a lateral move, without much difference between the two. However, the S22's AMOLED 2x 120Hz display is absolutely stunning in person, and blows away the S10e's aging tech. The S22 also features the new Gorilla Glass Victus screen, so it should hold up even better against chips and scratches for years to come. If you value a great display, the S22 is worth the price of admission alone. However, if you are someone who uses your phone as a primary source to consume video content, you may be disappointed with the speakers. The S22 speakers are shockingly similar to the S10e, which means they are fine. Not exceptionally loud or what I would describe as full. It's actually kind of surprising how little Samsung has advanced their speakers over the last 3 years, while they continue to be outshined in particular by the iPhone. From a design standpoint, I think the S22 is rather stunning. I really prefer the flat edges and the matte glass back on the Phantom Black variant that I have here. But both phones have excellent build quality with premium materials, so you may still prefer the more traditional design of the S10e. There are 3 things that you're going to lose when upgrading from the S10e from a design perspective, so here's the bad news. There's no SD card slot in the S22, so think very carefully about how much storage that you need up front before purchasing. This is a real shame, as that upgradability of the S10e really made it so you could save some money on the upfront cost. An even bigger deal to me is giving up the physical fingerprint reader featured on the side of the S10e. This tiny little fingerprint reader has been rock solid and lightning fast for me with 0 issues. I wasn't sure how I'd like the position of it when I first got the phone, but it quickly became second nature to pick up the phone and have it immediately unlocked by grabbing the fingerprint reader with my thumb. And one of my favorite features of this side reader is the fact that when your phone was unlocked, you could swipe up and down on it to display the notification bar in quick settings in Android. Being able to do this over the top of any app at any time has become so second nature to me, and not having it in the S22 has taken a while to get used to. Again, even with above average sized hands in the position that I normally hold my phone, swiping down from the very top of the phone is just uncomfortable enough to make it a pain. So I will miss that side fingerprint reader, and I hope it's something they consider bringing back in the future iterations of the S series phones. The ultrasonic in-display reader of the S22 is fine, and I'm sure I'll get used to it, but it's certainly not as fast as the S10e and is more prone to errors in my initial impressions. Also gone from the S10e is the 3.5mm headphone jack. I know everyone has done away with the headphone jack at this point, and honestly I hate it. The fact that the S10e still had that headphone jack was, at the time, a major deciding factor for me in choosing that phone 3 years ago. My background is in audio engineering, and while I understand that most of the world likes and almost prefers Bluetooth headphones, the audio quality is not even close to a good pair of wired headphones. So I guess I'm all about that dongle life from here on and out. Let's pour one out for the headphone jacks everywhere, RIP. Let's talk internals for a bit. I won't bore you with all the hardware specs of each phone, just know that the S22, which ships in the US with the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, blows away the older 855 chipset in the S10e, at least on paper. In reality, as someone who considers themselves a power user, I've rarely noticed any hiccups with the S10e, and in regular day-to-day tasks like opening and closing apps, the differences between the two phones is negligible. So if you're not someone who needs all that extra processing power, don't let the performance be an area to sway your decision. One nice addition coming from the S10e is the 5G support in the S22. If you're in an area with good 5G coverage, the speeds are noticeably better, even in regular internet browsing. The S22 also supports Wi-Fi 6E, which is the latest standard in wireless internet. And while it's not super common yet, it's certainly a pro that this device is future-proof, and it will continue running at top speeds on Wi-Fi for years to come. Now from a software standpoint. As I'm filming this today, Samsung is continuing its rollout of Android 12 on the S10e. I haven't received the update yet, but once updated, the software will be identical between each of these devices. That said, this will be the last major OS update that the S10e will receive. Plus, you'll get one more year of security updates. Whereas Samsung has already promised an industry-leading 4 years of major Android OS updates and 5 years of security updates for their new phones. So while your S10e might have about a year remaining of security updates, that will be the end of it. So jumping over the S22 now ensures your phone will be supported for the next 5 years. Alright, it's time. Let's talk battery life. There's been a lot of discussion and disappointment that Samsung has downgraded to a 3700 mAh battery from the 4000 mAh battery in last year's S21. For their part, Samsung claims that the efficiencies made up in the software and with their variable refresh rate display will more than make up for the battery life in everyday use. That said, if you're coming from the S10e, you've been living with a 3100 mAh battery that was already small when released, and if you're like me, your battery life has just gotten a little bit worse every year. I've only had the S22 for about a week, but I can tell you the battery life has definitely improved over my S10e, but your actual usage may vary. Either way, the S22 battery life is certainly nothing to brag about, but it should easily get you through most days of average use. Alright, before we get into the camera comparison, I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite feature of your current phone is and what you're looking for in a future upgrade. And on your way down there, if you could hit that like button, it really makes a huge difference in supporting this channel. Okay, finally, let's talk cameras. Now, the biggest upgrade here is that the main camera is now 50 megapixels in comparison to the 12 megapixels on the S10e. The ultra-wide camera is present on both phones and pretty comparable, although the S10e is just slightly wider. And then the S22 now gives you the 3x optical zoom lens, which should lend itself well for portrait photography or really anytime you just want to get a little bit closer without moving your feet. Now in terms of video recording, both phones allow you to record up to 200 frames per second in 1080p and 60 frames per second in 4K. The S22 does allow up to 8K video, but is limited to 24 frames per second. To be honest, I don't really know why anyone would want to shoot 8K video on their phone, particularly a phone that doesn't include an SD card slot, because the file sizes are just going to be massive. So I didn't test this for this comparison. I've built this little rig so we can have the S10e and the S22 both next to each other so we can take the same photo and video at the same time. So over the next few minutes we'll go back and forth with still images and video between the two phones' camera systems, and we'll see how they compare. Alright, let's check out the selfie camera on both of these phones, and we'll check out how the audio sounds when it's facing in this direction. So it's kind of a vlog test. I'm walking around and the sun is bright. Let's see how it does in dark shadows. What does it do to expose? Is it exposing correctly? Let's just stop here and do an audio test. I'm talking into the S10e. S10e, this is the audio test of the S10e, and the S22. This is the audio test of the S22 now. Alright, so what'd you think? To be honest, I'm kind of blown away by how well the S10e still compares to the latest flagship in terms of camera quality, even 3 years later. Now in fairness, Samsung does continue to update their cameras with software tweaks as they age. So a lot of the software processing is identical between these two phones at this point, but still, the differences were pretty subtle throughout. I mostly noticed some tweaks in the color science where the S10e feels a little more high contrast with vivid colors, and the S22 seemed a little more natural. Which one you prefer is really just a matter of taste. But overall, if the cameras are a big selling point for you when it comes to upgrading phones, it may be best to hold off for a while, because the S10e's camera system is still great. Alright, that's it for this comparison. Overall, my impression of these two is that the S10e is still a fantastic phone, and includes some standout features like that headphone jack and the side fingerprint reader. That said, the S22 really shines in terms of the display and the overall design. But they're surprisingly similar even 3 generations later. I hope this video comparison was helpful for you, and if it was, I'd really appreciate it if you can hit that like button and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.